G'day guys, Daniel here from Caravan Industry Victoria, and I've got Linda Hitch from Hitch Engineering here today. Pretty important topic here today, Linda. We're going to go over couplings, safety chains, and also D-shackles. So pretty important aspect about connecting your car to your caravan.
Absolutely is.
So we're going to go through them individually. So if you've sort of got a particular topic that you want to focus on, stick around with us because we're going to, they all interrelate. And we've got some other topics as well in other sessions where we're talking about, hooking up and weight distributions and stuff as well. So have a look for those as we go. But Linda, probably the first thing we want to do is start, as we've sort of done with a couple of our other presentations, to talk about the rules and regs. So I'll bring up VSB1 and we'll talk about, I'll get you to talk because you're the expert on this, on the rules and regs around couplings, and we can bring up a few other pictures and slides as we go.
Absolutely. So as we've mentioned in our other video content, VSB1 is essentially the Bible for your caravan, and a critical element, as we've just mentioned, is the coupling. And the whole aim of the coupling is to ensure that your caravan is always fit in some way to the tow vehicle. So some people may argue that it might be overkill having chains and so forth, and your actual coupling, that is all required. The chains are a secondary form. So all of this information can be found in ADR 6202, I think is the latest version. And if you are unsure, you can quite easily type that in, and it'll take you to the government website and the Department of Transport, and that is accessible to everyone. So if you want to get more information, feel free to look that up, and it's all divvied up into subsections. So within coupling, it has all the requirements relative to the ATM. So the very important thing is your coupling must be rated to your ATM, and by law all the ADR compliant couplings that are sold in the industry should have the rating on that, as well as the type of connection. So you'll probably see, Daniel, if you can pull up the standard 50mm ball coupling that you'll find on most of your trailers. Yep. They're generally rated in two groups. You have a coupling that is normally rated to, I think, 2,000 or 2,500 kg, or 3,500, and this is pretty much a standard one. It also should have on there what Australian standard it specifies, or that it's been designed to, and ADR 62 also references this Australian standard 4177-3, and it essentially means that that coupling has been designed in such a fashion that it will withstand a certain factor of load. So your coupling is affected by several directions. So there's vertical, along the axis, and then along the length, and they all have different factors of 1.5 and 0.5. So all the manufacturers make sure that before they can mark all of that, that those are adhered to. So it means that the coupling will not fail when it's connected to the drawbar and coupled to your vehicle.
Yeah. So I think there's probably a couple of things here, and I just tried to get into ADR 62, but if I just get back to couplings for a second. So if we click down to get to area 16, because we just saw that before, the 50mm balls used for ATM that does not exceed 3.5 tons too. So we're also getting products that are heavier. So did you want to sort of talk about how they work?
Yep. So there are a few manufacturers that are also producing ADR compliant ball couplings for over 3.5. So if you had a ATM of 3,501 and a 50mm ball coupling is not sufficient. You'd have to go up to the next one. The next one is a 70mm ball coupling. And like I said, there are a few suppliers that have that. Again, it still needs to meet the AS specifications. And, oh, pardon me. And again, you also need to make sure that you have the correct toe ball to match that ball coupling as well. So that's another key thing. I think we'll go through that anyway.
Yeah. So we've got some stuff here, and I'm just going to have a bit of a chuckle that I said that I'm going to try and not cough because I've been coughing all day and you did it for me. So that's very good too. So, as I go to cough now. So there's some key requirements around the markings which you talked about and the capacities, but also some keywords about do not weld and weld only. So did you just want to speak to what that sort of means?
Okay, so when these couplings are manufactured, they're done as a cast part. So what they don't want is people to weld to these. The welding process actually affects the molecular structure of that cast part and potentially make something brittle. So as a result, you are weakening that structure. This is why all couplings, you'll notice they're all bolted connections, and it's for that reason. We cannot and must not interfere with the manufactured contours of that. And if you need any adjustment or anything like that, if your coupling height is too high, there are ways to reattach it, but you do not shave off any material off that cast part.
Yeah, correct. So the other probably common type, as I'll just bring up this photo, is sort of as becoming known in industry is an off-road type coupling, and what it's got is more articulation. Probably is the best way to describe it, Linda. These are becoming more and more frequent, and they don't fall under the same regs, but they're still got to be compliant and meet, ADR 61, as you can see on the stickers and all that sort of stuff as well.
And they'll have all the same. They'll have all the same descriptors on there as to what it's rated to, what ADR it's compliant to, and the manufacturer as well. Interesting, yes, these do provide you with far more articulation, where your typical ball coupling will allow you this movement. This will actually allow you more longitudinal movement, which gives you probably more rotation when you are doing off-road. So it is very important to think about what terrain you're predominantly going to be looking at with your caravan.
Yeah, probably a couple of quick things here from my experience in time is, this is a pin type coupling, so it clips in through the housing there, and there's a button that releases it. But in the market, there's actually been copies of this and haven't been certified. So you got to make sure you're buying from the right company and checking that out. There was a couple of years ago, I think probably 3 or 4 years ago, where there was literally duplicates of that particular coupling being made, and that weren't actually from the supplier. So probably a couple of key things there, but as you said,
from a reputable supplier, definitely not. I'd be steering clear of unusual suppliers that don't have a very strong market share. Absolutely.
So, if we sort of then look at the regs, and we'll jump between a couple of things here. And probably something that's confused a lot of people, Linda, is around the heights of couplings. And when you read it, and you read it on face value, here it talks about the ball couplings on tow bars are required to be installed at a height. So the center is 350 to 420. However, it can go to 460 now because they've increased it as well. So what's probably interesting about this statement, and I'll get you to sort of talk a little bit more through this, but it's talking about the coupling and the ball that sits on the car, and everyone sort of gets confused. But I think the key reference is what the actual standard is and referring back to that standard.
Yeah. Well, most people think that the coupling of the caravan needs to meet the coupling of the towing vehicle, and it's the other way around. Most caravan manufacturers know the limits that normal vehicle tow balls will be sitting at, and they obviously build to within that range. Now there are numerous types of adapter plates and offsets available to modify that to meet the ball coupling or the pin connection for your caravan. If you are having issues with that, I'd be strongly advising you to go to one of the providers that do a lot of the modifications and help you out. They'll be able to help also with aligning your caravan and getting to the optimum design height, I'd say, for that coupling.
So there's probably a couple of key words in here that sort of probably want to talk to a couple of people. The ball may be installed at any other height, provided it's capable of being adjusted to at least one within. So, you know, that could be a plethora of ways. You know, you've got hitches that are adjustable. You know, it could be also when you're loading the cars, you know, because their heights could be different, and it could take into consideration if you put weight on the back. You know, there's a plethora of ways, and we sort of did an alert, as I just try to find the photo, a little while ago, which probably this diagram in the bottom right hand corner, which I'll sort of zoom in, and it might be a little bit blurry, but I'll try.
It gives the essence though.
It's really there we go. So,
that's fine then. Yeah.
So, you know, you look at the back of the car and where the ball sits in that range. Now, it needs to be able to be adjusted in that area. So it's critical to probably think outside the square. And I know common industry practice is, you know, you have your vans flat, but most often it's actually good to have a slight nose down to you know, just from a towability point of view. So, you know, if you go to your caravan and go, oh, it's not within 350 to 460 as the range says, but that could be flat, but you actually might need a little bit of a slight lean. So your point's a good one, Linda, where you talk about how the caravan's designed and the towability and how the manufacturers really tried to get the van to suit. So, you know, the adjustableness in that regulation is probably the important aspect of it. It obviously needs to be within reasonable expectation, but, you know, it can be, you know, we've seen some up to, you know, 500, 600 mil from the ground.
Absolutely. And like you said, if you have a four-wheel drive and you have loaded that vehicle within an inch of its GVM capacity, you will find that your tow ball will be slightly lower. So where you've had it sit originally may not meet. So you may need to remove the pin and lower it some. So again, you need to be mindful of that before you travel, after you travel, etc.
I think probably what's important with all these regs too, Linda, and if we'd be really honest about the rules and regs, they've been developed some time ago. You know, we talked in another session about where these regs sit under in the Motor Vehicle Standards Act, which is 1989. Yes, the ADRs get updated, but they haven't been updated for a while. At the same time, they're being reviewed now. So, you know, caravans and trailers have changed. You know, the suspensions, the clearances, what we do with them.
Absolutely.
But also so is the tow vehicles, and we see some of the big trucks, as I call them, from America that are coming over, and they're a lot higher off the ground than what our products are as well.
I agree. I think over time we're going to find that boundary will be, I think, widened, because also not only that, a lot more of the off-road caravans are getting higher. You know, typically the off-road suspension sits a lot higher than your underslung leaf spring rocker roller type. So if you're still bound within that height, what will be that your caravan will sit like that because of the suspension being so high, because people want the clearance underneath to pass over the rocky terrain. And you can't do that if it's sitting at 350 high. So
really, if I look at this and go back in time, the way these were really written, and particularly how it describes, because the other important aspect of that height, it talks about the 50 mil ball, but it's really focused around touring vehicles on road, you know, that aren't really going anywhere else. So.
Correct. Historically, caravanning was more going somewhere, but it was always an accessible pathway. Whereas now we want to get off the beaten track, you know, and explore uncharted areas which means it won't be sealed and the terrain won't be flat. And obviously people then need to buy caravans to suit that adventure.
Yeah.
And then the setup will be different again, which comes to the coupling.
Yeah, exactly right. So we probably, I don't know about you, probably covered enough around the couplings, and we might move across to the safety chains as the next item to talk about as I bring the regulation up around safety chains. And we've got a couple of other documents and stuff here. So I'll let you talk through the reg, and then I'll bring up pictures as you sort of go through and talk about markings and stuff like that.
So yeah, with the oil safety chains, as simple as of a component it is, it's one that is wrong frequently with people that do their own modifications, or if they're just not vigilant and they buy something off a supplier. There are requirements for those safety chains, again, to Australian standards. All the safety chains must be marked with the numbers from the standard AS 4177. Now, if you have a look, now if you have a look, that actually defines the diameter of the links, and that equates it to a chain capacity. And so if you have a look at your caravan tonight and look at the chain, you will find the numbers 4177-2535, etc. The 35 stands for that have been rated to 3,500, and okay, there you go. And this one's rated to 2,005. Here's one I prepared earlier, 2,500. If it doesn't have that marking, you really should look at having them replaced by a proper workshop, because that marking tells you it's been correctly tested. So, and it needs to be to your ATM limits. So if your caravan obviously is rated at 3 tonne, they're not sufficient, okay?
It also needs to be on every 4th link, doesn't it, as well, from memory? Because some of them try to do it on one and then think they're done.
Yep. And then not only that, yes, so every 4th link as well. And the reason why that's denoted that way is because through usage, your chains do get pretty banged up, but you'll find generally the first couple of links that's on your drawbar will always, you'll find that the cast part print or the etching on it will be far more legible than one of the others that's sort of been roughed, you know, dropped on the ground and so on. So that's the reason why they're so frequently marked.
The other thing that a supplier said to me in the past as well is they've got a really long runner chain, so they make a heap of chain. Yep. And if you, when they cut it, then to attach it, you might cut off the link that's got the markings on there, so you might actually lose the markings, and if you don't have it for another 100 links or something like that, you're in big trouble.
Yep. No, that's exactly right. So again, you can't have chains that are too short or too long. If they're too long, they'll essentially be dragging along the road. If they're too short, they won't reach the tow vehicles. So yeah, that also, you need to sort of keep an eye on that.
Correct. So, you know, sort of cover the markings and all that. We'll probably move across to attachment points for the, and how they need to be attached.
Yeah, this is another one. On the caravans, again, in ADR 62, it does require the first link to not be pointing downwards. So that they prefer, obviously, so from the bottom of your drawbar, okay, thank you. So this first link must be welded or attached in such a fashion that that first link does not protrude from the bottom perimeter of that drawbar. The reason why is if your caravan became uncoupled, as it hits the floor, the integrity of that first link is sound. And so you're always going to have that connection. So that's the reason why they need that either horizontal. Other manufacturers these days are actually embedding it within the drawbar, so that it is very much well clear of being caught on anything really, and it cannot be done. Okay, yeah, like this here. So that's going from the inside view of the drawbar, looking forward towards the coupling. And again, welded, that has to be welded at 50% of the perimeter of the chain. Yep. with the first link exposed, obviously, but not below, as you see here, it's not below the bottom of that drawbar.
Yeah, you can see that.
Yeah.
Bottom of the drawbar there.
Yeah. So that's exactly how you can have them connected.
So I'm hoping they're all the photos that we prepared earlier. I think it does cover most of them. Obviously, important aspects now. I know a lot of people that I've spoken to in the past, as I'll just stop sharing that. I've had a couple of people in the industry that I've dealt with for a while now. They've had examples of where where the couplings come off. And one of the guys, who's one of our trainers at our training college, has described to me that he was towing a van up north and it come up unclipped because, you know, anything could happen. And if you don't have the chains, and the actual old vans didn't have chains, what happened was he started going slower down a hill, and all of a sudden the caravan comes sliding past him because there was no chains. So the chains are a safeguard that if something goes wrong and it comes uncoupled from your coupling, it holds on to the car. So.
Absolutely. And people think, oh, look, the likelihood of it coming off is very unlikely. No, surprisingly, it happens more often than you care to imagine.
Yeah,
it's very easy for the actual ball coupling to not fully engage, even though you think you've got it. Sometimes they can get a bit sticky after some weathering. So yeah, absolutely. You want to make sure they're correctly installed.
Correct. So that probably leads us on to the last one, and a little bit of a story that I like to talk about with this one, which is then how you connect your safety chains to your car, which, you know, typically done through a D-shackle, these the bow shackles and all that sort of stuff. So I'll tell a little bit of a small story, and I'll try to keep it as quick as possible. And then I'll bring up some documents as we go through, and I'll get you to talk through those, Linda. But back in the day, and I reckon it was around 2013, I got a couple of phone calls from consumers going, oh, what's the rules and regs around D-shackles? I've got all these flyers that have been given to me, and a bit of a problem. And I'm like, okay, all right, what's going on here? So what it was before the Queensland Caravan Show in June, and it was about a month before it. We're at the Gympie Caravan Park. Someone had left flyers on people's cars, but also posted on notice boards that said, oh, you know, you got to have these certain requirements, and they've got to be certain testing, and need these markings, blah, 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 around your D-shackles. Now, what it also said, oh, you need to have the yellow tongue, and that was the key thing. You've got to have this yellow pin. You've got to have that. Otherwise, they're non-compliant, and you'll be fined, and all this sort of stuff. And at the bottom of that said, come and see us at the Caravan Show, and we'll sell them to you. So advertising, because in that aspect, then we started to do some digging, and around the country, some states have guidance documents that weren't enforced. Now, the regs have changed in recent time, but what we did at the time is we did some research, and we went through to PWB Anchor, who major supply chains and shackles, and we got them to provide us in writing how they would deem it. And they also said that they would deem it, as I start to bring up some information here, they deem it to still meet the regulations of, so from memory, the regulation, I shouldn't have forgot this, but this is where the guidance document came out. I think it's 2.3 something, whatever Australian standard the shackle is. It's probably in this one. Oh, there you go.
271.
That's for lifting applications, as you can see here in the circular, which we'll come back to. It's actually for lifting purposes. So what it was designed for, think about mechanics and pulling engines out, that was what it was focused for, but it wasn't for pulling applications is what we would have. So we had to get it in writing, and as I said, there's been some changes, you know, in legislations. We had to do some educational video. So you can see Russell here, one of our guys with the yellow pin. You know, everyone thought it has to have this yellow pin, but it's just more about the certification. So with that said, Linda, there was a guidance document that the federal government released a few years ago now. Is there a date on this? No, doesn't look like there is. But if I go back to when we did the alert, that doesn't have a date on it either. I think it was probably
April 2016.
There you go, April 16. So goes back a little while. But if you want to sort of talk about, oh, there's the background. about the connections, the load limits, and all that sort of stuff, and how it would be defined.
Yeah.
You know, it's a funny story, but I try to keep it as short as possible. But it's a very interesting one how this came to fruition.
Yes, yeah. All right, so D shackles or bow shackles, they also need to be marked, and you will find that they will have a WLL, which is your working load limit. And again, that is also factored by the diameter of the shackle as well. What I find they get confused about is when you have a WLL limit of, say, 1 ton, you'll have a 1T, 1.5T, 2, and so on. And they're concerned normally because they think that, hang on, my caravan is a two-ton suspension. Is this sufficient? So D shackles, that when you go into the spec, the D shackles have a working limit, but they also have a braking limit. And your braking limit is a factor of 6 above what the working limit is. So if your D shackle or bow shackle has a 1 ton working load limit, that actually means it's a 6 ton brake limit shackle. So you don't need to get one that has a 3 ton working load limit on there. I think there's been a lot of some confusion. There's also different grades of shackle as well, which is why, again, and there are some, let's say, suppliers, I think, that are unmarked. Again, I would be strongly recommending people go towards shackles that are marked, because then that means they have been tested and comply to the AS 2741 standard.
So yeah, we sort of did it before, but there's a plethora of different.
Yep.
So we might see if there's a clear picture here.
Okay, yeah, so something like that. See, it actually has, I think it's got the, does it have the S? It has the 10 millimeter and as the code working limit, that's 1 1/4 ton.
Yep.
You can't go by the color of the pin. We need to establish that. You go by the marking.
That might be a bit better to see. So if we bring this picture up from our marine shop here. Oh, there you go. How good's this? It's a bit hard to understand, but...
That's okay. So, yeah, as you can see here, the rated loads for the pin diameter. Yep. And that, again, they have to be galvanized as well, because that's the other thing we didn't mention about the chains as well. We can't have them rust up, because then obviously you're going to have issues down the track with how well it will weather and support your load. So
unclear picture, but the second one is a 5T by the look of it. Can't really make out the first picture, but
yeah.
You know, the key bit is, and you can see some of these that don't have markings, so you know you don't want to buy particular ones. There's a clear one.
That's 3.2. That's not as common to get a 3.2.
So
yeah, and then again, as you're getting up in size, if you are looking at, you know, the caravans that are at around 4 ton, again, the shackles also need to be updated, as well as the chain. So I think at that point you're looking at 800 MPa.
And it's a good point, because as you get thicker as well, your pins normally get thicker as well, because they're going to take more force. Now, some of your tow bars, the pins might not actually fit. So that's something else to be considerate of too.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot of these elements. And again, I strongly urge people to go into VSB1 or ADR62. Even the hammer locks, actually, that's something that we're seeing more often too, Daniel, now that you've got that up. That's another very common attachment style that people are looking at. The regulation states that the attachment to the caravan side of the chains needs to be something that can't be undone. It needs to be permanently attached. And the only end, the end that has a pin connection or a method of attaching can only be on the tow vehicle side. So that's the other thing I've noticed. Some people can get confused and they think you can use a bow shackle or a D shackle on both sides. You can't.
Yep. So there we go. That probably covers links, safety chains and D shackles, I reckon, and also hammer locks and bow shackles, as you sort of touched on as well. But obviously, some really critical area that people need to be wary of.
Yeah, it's probably worth mentioning, Daniel, if people aren't comfortable or aren't aware, when you go to pick up your caravan, ask the service guys there. They're more than happy to help you understand how do I connect this up correctly to my vehicle. It's one thing to see it on a video on YouTube, but with your own vehicle, sometimes you can get a bit nervous or a bit confused. So please ask them and let them show you how to do it. They might provide you some little tips and handy hints here and there.
Yeah, correct. I think that's a good way to wrap us up, Linda. That was a very good closing statement. I think you're 100% right. There's so many elements go into it, so you're better off seeking the right advice from the appropriate people to make sure you're always safe.
Yeah, and the industries, I've only ever come across service people that are more than happy to disclose a lot of this information because they just want everyone to be safe. So it's definitely well worth it, and it keeps you legal.
That's it. That's it. All right, guys. Well, that probably wraps us up for this one. So if you want to find out some more hints and tips about being safe and all the rules and regs, have a look for our other segments and enjoy.
Yes, thank you.